Detroit, once the beating heart of American industry and one of the bloodiest cities in the nation. But behind the headlines of gang wars and bootlegging bloodbaths, there was a secret pact, a silent partnership that helped one mafia family conquer it all. This is the story of how the Detroit Mafia, the partnership, rose from the shadows to dominate the underworld. And why their name was barely whispered, even as the blood flowed in Motor City. The story begins in the early 1900s. Italians, Jews, Irish, all fleeing poverty and war in Europe, landed in the American Midwest. Among them were the Tocco and Zerilli families, Sicilian immigrants who laid the foundations for what would become the Detroit Mafia. Detroit was booming with auto money, but Prohibition cracked the door open for real power, and the Italians weren't the only ones who noticed. While Capone grabbed headlines in Chicago, Detroit's underworld played it quiet and smarter. The Italians had muscle and discipline. The Jews, especially the feared Purple Gang, had the connections and disruption. And in an unprecedented move, they chose partnership over war. They carved the city up. Respect, boundaries, profit. It was business, mafia style. Despite the peace between the Italian and Jewish factions, Detroit wasn't safe. The bootlegging industry was cutthroat. Gangs turned against each other. Rival bootleggers died by the dozen. The city earned its title, America's bloodiest city. But one group remained mostly untouched, the Italians, the partnership. They let others kill each other off, then absorb the survivors. Power through patience, influence through silence. And as the Purples faded from power, broken by federal indictment and internal betrayal, the Detroit Mafia quietly expanded. By the 1940s, the Detroit Partnership had matured. Joseph Zerilli, a man so respected he was known simply as Uncle Joe, led with an iron fist and velvet gloves. No flash, no flamboyance, just results. The Mafia reach extended from gambling dens to legitimate businesses, and eventually to the Union. Especially the most powerful of all, the Teamsters. It was in Detroit that the infamous ties between Jimmy Hoffa and the Mafia solidified. Loans from the Teamsters pension fund fueled mob casinos in Las Vegas. Millions flowed, but it all came back to the partnership. Detroit had become a command center, not just a territory, but a mafia corporation, playing chess while others played checkers. Jimmy Hoffa's disappearance in 1975 shocked America, but behind closed doors the Mafia barely flinched. They knew the cost of disobedience, and Hoffa had crossed the line. Many believed the Detroit Partnership had a direct hand in Hoffa's fate. Not out of hatred, but necessity. He had become a liability, and in the Mafia, liabilities disappear. Meanwhile, Detroit's money was fueling the explosion of Las Vegas. Skimming, loan sharking, silent ownership of casinos. Even as the FBI turned up the heat, the partnership kept a low profile. No rats, no headlines. They weren't just surviving, they were thriving, because they understood something few others did. Real power doesn't roar, it whispers. Today, the Detroit Mafia is a shadow of what it once was. Federal indictments, surveillance, and time have worn it down. But make no mistake, it never vanished. Unlike the flashy New York families, the partnership was built on silence. Legacy, secrecy, and because of that, it lasted longer than many. Names like Tocco, Zerilli, and Giacalone still carry weight, not in headlines but in whispers. And in the blood-soaked streets of Detroit, their story still lingers in the air. The Detroit Mafia conquered America's bloodiest cities, not with brute force, but with brains, business, and the most powerful weapon of all, unity. A city divided by violence, ruled by a secret alliance. That's the true legacy of the partnership. This has been Mafia Tales. If you like this story, subscribe, like, and drop a comment down below. Who should we cover next? Until then, keep your friends close and your partners even closer.